You stand still now! Don't you f***ing go down there! You stand still now! Don't you f***ing go down there! No! Stop! Stop! Put that f***ing knife down now! Put it down! Put it down! Put it down! Get out! Get out! Get out! Lock the door! Lock the door! Lock the door! Lock the door! Put the knife down, Con. Con, put the knife down. Don't. Put the knife down. Put the knife down, Con. Con, put it down. Con, we're not going to let you hurt anyone else.
Yeah, Delta 2. I have the suspect secured. I am fine on my own. Everyone else?
You're next, mother. There is a bond on your head.
I'm fine here, mate.
You're
the knife
next.
is there.
You're next.
Can you just canvass these people and check this is the only suspect? The only suspect.
Look,
just canvass here.
He is dead, isn't it? I warned you, the police, 1 year. Look, it happened. You idiot imbeciles. I was in special forces. I warned them. I was gonna murder him. Could you please put the center at the front?
Right, are you happy to tell me your name now? I think I know what it is, but you haven't actually told me. What's your name, please?
So I'm going to search you.
Okay. So what we're searching you for is anything that can harm us, anything that can harm you, or anything that could aid your escape, okay?
He's dead and I've been begging the police 1 year. I was gonna murder him. Because he was against my son, my wife. Look, I'm begging you, could you put this in front?
No, unfortunately we can't. That's not in our
When I
policy.
have disability, don't you believe?
I do believe you, but I don't believe that they're causing you any harm, and it's
They are, I have arthritis.
Right, okay, it's proportionate to the
Look at
offence
the
that
10
we
of
suspect.
you, mother. Look, like I murdered 10 people. There is a bond on your head as
What
well.
is it, a lighter?
Hey, there's no point threatening us, is there? It's not going to get you anywhere. Get in the van.
Yeah.
It's not getting you anywhere.
This is the Scarcity Studios YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And our sponsors at Alpha Claims and Hire Birmingham, the leading and best accident management company. Get a replacement car anywhere in 1 hour. I really appreciate you joining me today, and this news comes from Gloucester. On October the 5th last year, Matthew Boorman was stabbed to death by his neighbour, Arslan, over a long-running feud to do with parking spaces and neighbourly disputes. Arslan stabbed him 27 times, and he also stabbed Peter Marston 8 times. An off-duty police officer who lived in the local area tried to stop him, and CCTV was released to show Arslan making his way to his neighbour Peter Marston's house, and the off-duty police officer trying to stop him. Today, has been found guilty of the murder of Matthew Boorman and the attempted murder of his other neighbour. This feud had been going on for over 12 years, and the family of Matthew Boorman today have said that they feel the police didn't do enough to try to intervene. The local area was so scared of Arslan, they all put up a lot of security cameras and other sorts of measures to try to keep each other safe, and most of the murder and attacks were caught on camera, as you can see in the video. Matthew Boorman was parked outside his house at 5:20 p.m. after returning from work, and he was still on a conference call when attacked him. The killing was the culmination of 12 years of threats by Arslan against his neighbours in the Walton Cardiff area near Tewkesbury in Gloucestershire. The trial was heard at Bristol Crown Court, and Mr. Boorman's wife Sarah suffered a deep wound to the leg as she tried to save her husband from the attack. In a recorded police interview, Mrs. Boorman said that she unlocked the front door for her husband at around 5 p.m. on the day of the incident, and their neighbour came in through the kitchen window. She initially believed that he was throwing punches, but then she realised that he had a knife. The witness mimed the knife being brought down again and again into her husband's face and neck. He continued to stab Matthew like he was an animal, she said. Mrs. Boorman said she screamed at the neighbours to come and help, and Arslan had swiped at her with the knife. She said that she wishes that she'd hit him or thrown something at him to try to distract him to give Matthew a chance. And after Arslan had murdered Matthew, he sat on top of him and lit a cigarette, and she said he was almost triumphant. He threw the cigarette away and then casually walked off as Matthew lay dying on the floor. She said that he was very calm and he knew exactly what he was doing, and he waited for Matthew to die, and then he knew that the job had been done. He was very pleased with himself, and she added that her oldest child had seen her father's bloodied body from the window, and added that he would never get this out of his head. After murdering Mr. Boorman, Arslan forced his way into the home of another neighbour called Peter Marsden. He stabbed him 8 times, but Mr. Marsden was able to fight him off and get him out of the property. This is what was caught on CCTV. He was helped by an off-duty police officer called Mr. Wilkinson, who had followed Arslan into the house, brandishing a piece of wood to try to force him to drop the knife. The jury was shown footage of Arslan banging on Mr. Marsden's patio windows with the knife, telling him to come out before lighting a cigarette. The attacker then walked back towards Mr. Boorman's home, and those that were trying to save his life had to carry Mr. Boorman away in case Mr. Arslan tried to attack him again. In interview, Mr. Arslan admitted that he'd stabbed Mr. Marsden and also caused grievous bodily harm to Mrs. Boorman and a charge of affray, but he denied murder. He said the charge he should face is manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. But this week, a jury has unanimously found him guilty of murder after a day of deliberations. During the trial, the court heard that Arslan was not mentally ill and he was not in the grip of psychosis. However, he was diagnosed with a personality disorder. It was said in court that it manifested itself in extreme anger and aggression to perceived insults and making grandiose claims about himself, an exaggerated sense of his own importance. They said despite this, he was fully in control of his actions and he knew the difference between right and wrong. The defence argued that Arslan's personality disorder was an abnormality of his mental function and therefore provided a defence for murder. The judge, Mrs. Justice Cutt, said she wanted a further psychiatric report before she would sentence him, and in the meantime he has been returned back to Broadmoor, where he has spent the duration of his time on remand. They heard in court that he'd been served with a notice of eviction, and they believed that this may have led on from the small parking rails, and also a car had been scratched as well. And there'd been multiple incidents involving Can Arslan and other neighbours in the years coming up to the culmination of events. Mrs. Boorman had said in a statement to the police that she'd been worried about being murdered by him, and Arslan countered these allegations by accusing them of being racist. Mr. Arslan had spoken to a police officer when he made the claims, and he told the police that he would murder his neighbour. After his arrest, the defendant said that he'd taken an overdose of opiate-based drugs, including diazepam. However, at the hospital, they determined that he'd not took any kind of drugs. Medics found that he was alert and had no psychotic symptoms, and while in hospital, Arslan was interviewed by police and made comments about stabbing his neighbours. His defence said in court that he was not trying to wriggle out of the responsibility for Mr. Boorman's death, and this is very clearly not normal behaviour. He attacked him in broad daylight when there was a lot of CCTV. He didn't do it when he was at night and he was walking a dog and he didn't wear a mask. He didn't make any attempt to try to get away with it, and he continued to stab Mr. Boorman 27 times and then lit a cigarette as well. Does this seem like normal behaviour, the defence said in court? He is calm, he's robotic, he's emotionless throughout it all, and the defence referred to a number of witnesses that described Arslan as being psycho and having beady eyes, and also being amused at what he had done. Arslan had made reference to the impending eviction and said that his life had been ruined, and on the night of the murder he mentioned hearing voices and said that it was his childhood teddy bear. This was his main defence in court, but forensic psychiatrists were sceptical about the claims. They said that people suffering with a psychotic episode or prolonged mental illness will have a package of symptoms that would include paranoid delusions that are auditory and also visual hallucinations. The fact that this only occurred after the murder says to me that this is more of an attempt to try to make a defence for what he did. Thank you to Crazy Bristol on Instagram for filming some of the footage of the family coming out of court today. And his wife said in a statement that my husband was savagely stabbed to death by our neighbour over a trivial car dispute. She described the police as being toothless and ineffective in relation to investigating the threats of abuse over the years. Gloucestershire Constabulary have now referred themselves to the Independent Office of Police Conduct, and the watchdog said they were going to investigate all of the cases that are associated to this story. Mr. Boorman's wife said, "Today and for the rest of our lives, I'm going to mourn the loss of my husband. Our family and friends have been sentenced to a lifetime of grief. On the 5th of October 2021, Matthew's life was stolen from him by the defendant. In the years that preceded Matthew's death, multiple agencies and authorities were warned about the threat that this man posed, and to other neighbours as well. And although Matthew's murder shocked us all to the core, the incident was not out of the blue. The police and other authorities were told about how dangerous the man was, and the threats he made, and the risks that he presented. Matthew was not the only victim of this dreadful evening, but he was the only one to have lost his life. Throughout the trial, the defendant has revelled in the attention and also seeking his moment in the spotlight. He has not shown any remorse or an ounce of decency. I thought this story had so many different aspects that we can all sort of think about in relation to arguments, also long-term issues and how to resolve them better. And at the same time, why wasn't the police doing what they were meant to do as well, making sure that everybody was safe and that the neighbour didn't go on to do what he did. I really want to hear what everybody has to say on this story, and my condolences to the family of Mr. Boorman. And please don't forget to follow me online as well at Scarcity Studios on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter and Facebook. And I'll be back again very shortly with some more news. Peace.